Hey creeps, welcome to our channel. My name is Mike.
I'm Ellie.
And you have stumbled upon our new booktube. We will be discussing mysteries to satisfy your inner detective, thrillers that will send a chill down your spine, and horror stories that will keep you up at night. And today we're starting off with a really interesting pick that you actually recommended.
Yes.
So tell us about it.
Okay, so this recommendation actually comes from the Shades of Orange. I believe it was one of the videos where she's recommending horror books to other horror book YouTubers. And she was suggesting Into the Miso Soup by author Ryu Murakami. And this book takes place in Japan, so that's why I was interested in it. And here's a little bit more about the author and the novel.
Ryu Murakami is an award-winning Japanese novelist, essayist, and filmmaker with over 30 novels under his belt, which have been translated into multiple languages. One of his most well-known works inspired the 1999 feature horror film Audition. In the Miso Soup was published in 1997 and won the Yomiuri Prize for Fiction that same year. The book was later translated to English in 2003. The plot. 20-year-old Kenji is a Japanese nightlife guide for foreigners. He navigates gaijin men around sex clubs and hostess bars in Tokyo. Just before New Year's, Kenji receives a call from a strange American tourist, Frank, who seeks a 3-night tour of the red light district. Kenji struggles to keep his mind and fear in check as he suspects Frank may be connected to gruesome events being reported in the news. For our first impressions, I did not know what to expect. I actually went in blind for this book, which is pretty fun actually. But the thing is that, we primarily have watched many Japanese horror movies in the past, and those have always had an interesting twist or like some kind of disturbing subject matter. So I did expect that something similar was going to happen. And I would say in terms of my first impressions, it definitely exceeded my expectations. That's only good. Because I have never read anything as disturbing and fucked up as this ever before, right? I would say maybe we've watched movies that have like similar, kind of stuff, but I think that the build-up to kind of the climax of the book was really, really well done. And to me, it still sticks with me to this day. So, yeah, what did you think?
Well, first of all, I agree and disagree with what you've said.
How dare you?
My first impression was just the YouTube video from the Shades of Orange. And I think she just read the back of the book. And to me, it was interesting because since I do have a fascination with Japan, I thought it'd be interesting to learn more about like the sex industry that they have going on there. So that's what first intrigued me to the book. However, although they do touch upon some parts of the industry and they talk to sex workers and stuff like that, I don't think that it went I don't think it went into that much detail as I would have wanted it to. So maybe that's on me, probably. So I think my first impressions and my first expectation of this book was set a little bit higher than what I actually received. So I feel a little let down, although I still enjoyed it. But since you didn't have an expectation,
literally no context.
Yeah. So I think that's why you enjoyed it more.
For sure.
Yeah.
So talking about just some points of what specifically I really liked, kind of alluded to it already, but the build-up of the prose I think is really, really strong. So I was explaining this to a friend actually, but it's not necessarily that the author or the translation of the original text leaves you with a cliffhanger every chapter. It does do some of that, but every chapter there's a little piece of the puzzle that's unearthed through the conversation or the thoughts that the main character has, Kenji. and it just builds on top of itself from every chapter. And so the disturbing, creepy nature of what's going on just builds every chapter, right? And so I think that that's the momentum really that kept me want to read it. And I had certain ideas of where the story might go, and then eventually it went in a different direction. And then, like I said, the climax, which we'll get to, it was really satisfying for that reason. It was a really good release of that tension, I find. And even the conclusion of it, you know, I think the idea there was that it wanted to be more philosophical, right? So that kind of tapered down of the situation, I think, was really, really interesting as well. So for me, that was probably the best part about it. It's just how the story was paced, how it was written, and the build up to that initial climax there. Yeah.
So I have a couple thoughts on this.
Okay.
I very much did like and appreciate the perspective from Frank, the American, and Kenji, the Japanese tourist guide. I think the back and forth created a very unique tension that I haven't really found in many books. I think maybe you'd see it more in like psychological thrillers, like movies and stuff.
Yeah.
So to see it presented as a novel was very interesting. However, this is where I have an axe to grind a little bit.
Okay.
The build-up to me seemed very abrupt.
Right,
So
yeah.
that scene, right, that classic scene of the book, to me personally, I think it kind of went from 0 to 100 super quickly.
It's really good. I like this.
So
yeah.
you very much liked it.
Yeah.
To me, I think I was reading it and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, how did we get here?
Did you have to like stop and be like, wait, how?
Yeah.
Go back a chapter and be like, no.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Like, yeah, it kind of has that feeling like maybe I missed something.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was just me or if you felt
No,
that too.
I definitely felt that too. But again, I thought that was done on purpose, right?
Yeah.
It increases the shock value of that moment because ever since that time, any creepiness or derangement that Frank has is just implied.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing explicit about him doing something. It's just kind of like his mannerisms are awkward. Some of the things that he's saying or the stories that he has about his life don't really add up. And so it's this passive tension, right? Until you get to that one club and it's after hours and things just hit the fan immediately. And I think what makes that disturbing is that at that point it seems very planned, but it's also very cold and calculated. Like it's not, there's no emotion there. So any kind of feeling that you may have had before of Kenji saying, oh, maybe it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe he's not really that crazy. All that goes out the window. And so your expectations are completely shattered, right?
Yeah.
So definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
To me though, that was really, really cool. So in terms of like what could have been done better to make this like more memorable or something, like what would you say to that? You've kind of touched on some points already.
Well, I do think that to me was memorable because obviously I've never read anything so like graphic or kind of like jarring. But at the same time, I think the novel was only like 180 or some pages like that.
It's kind of short, yeah.
So maybe I understand that you do like the abruptness of like the climax scene, but to me, I think I would have liked like a little bit more build up. So maybe like a longer type of novel. I don't know if that would make it like 100% better, but it could definitely like add on to it, I think. But for me, like my favorite part was the ending where you said it was more philosophical or open-ended to like kind of make you think more. So I really enjoyed the ending and the kind of homage to the miso soup, which throughout the entire novel, I was like, where does this come from? Or like, is it just because it's Japan? Like, you know, I wanted there to be a connection to the title, although like in other books or movies, like there isn't always a connection, which I understand. But I was really happy and pleased to actually have that towards the end. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was also waiting for that. Like throughout, like I imagined that maybe they were gonna go and have like miso soup at every encounter that they had.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
I think for me, I would agree with you in the sense that I wish there was more of that back and forth conversation between Kenji and Frank.
Yeah.
Most of the background of Frank is given towards the end of the book, and it's only like, I don't know, 2-3 chapters worth of content. So either if the ending was a little bit longer to explain more of Frank's background, maybe even have like a secondary scene, right, that either was even crazier than this first one, and we'll get to it, but you know, something additional I think would have been really cool. But in general, I don't know if I would change anything else besides that. And I'm sure, you know, some of you would argue, right, like the leaving a character ambiguous also kind of adds to that creepy nature, so I totally get that. But yeah, just kind of nitpicking, I would say a little bit more context for Frank and his backstory would have been pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, so this is the moment. Let's talk about our favorite scene.
Okay.
So first of all, let me ask you, are we talking about the same scene? Or no?
I don't know.
No? Okay. So I'm going to start.
Yeah.
So this is a spoiler. So if you haven't read it, just skip over a couple things. If you have read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. Yeah. So as I said, I have never read anything so explicit and graphic ever, right? And I'm talking about the scene where Frank is just, you know, starting to kill people in the club. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was 2, right? It was the lady and then one of the other passerbyers, right? And to me, what was really crazy about this scene isn't necessarily just that he was, you know, slicing parts off of people, but it was really, to me, it was the sexual violence of it, right? Yeah. Like that whole context of it was crazy to me, even though it's funny because you started off like saying that this book had that context. And remember, I didn't know this, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I went in and I was like, okay, yeah, you know, they're going around to sex clubs or whatever just to kind of see the experience. And so for that to turn it into just, you know, kind of like voyeurism to an explicit act of violence, it was super crazy, right? Again, the descriptions in that passage were really, really well done. The shock of Kenji as he's like witnessing everything, I think was like brilliant, right? And it definitely plays out like a movie would, right? Like I can see like the camera zooming in on Kenji's face, just completely shocked. The stone cold nature of Frank, I could see that, right? And the other thing I think that worked really well in that scene is just how, as quick as it started, as abrupt as it started, how abruptly it ended.
Yeah, that's
right?
True.
Because then Frank just like comes out like nothing happened. He's just like, yeah, let's go to the next one, you know? And I thought that was super, super cool. Again, just for the shock value, and it was written really well. So to me, that scene is just, it sticks with me today, right? So if there's more recommendations like that, I don't know what that says about me, but it was really, really cool.
I don't think you want to know.
I don't want to know. Yeah, exactly. All right, what about you? What was your favorite scene?
Favorite scene? I don't know, honestly. I've already talked that I enjoyed the ending.
I like the bridge part.
Yeah, like more about the ending, because there was a chance that Kenji could turn Frank in, right?
Okay,
and
I see what you're saying.
he chose not to.
Yeah.
He chose to just walk away, essentially, which is really interesting because I think with most like protagonists, like Kenji in this case, you kind of expect them to do the right thing. But for this one, I think everything kind of turned on its head and all expectations kind of went out the window. So I do like the ending, probably my favorite. Another scene that stood out to me was also when they go into the pitching in the back.
Oh yeah.
They go to what is it? Baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball,
it's like a
yeah.
baseball thing.
They go to this pitching place that's like closed off to play some baseball. Just Frank and Kenji at like midnight, like in the middle of the night. And Frank just kind of breaks down because he doesn't remember how to play. Although previously to that, he was talking about how his dad or like his family, like they would play baseball a lot. So I think having that emotional breakdown of Frank was really interesting. Just it was just a good scene overall, I think.
Yeah, and even that was really disturbing too, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that he breaks down is so visceral, and you again you kind of you experience that with Kenji as he's describing it, right? It's like a little bit of a sense of fear, panic that he may have gone too far with this conversation and that he would get killed as a result. That doesn't happen, right? But it's just, yeah, that scene was really interesting. And then going back to something that you said too about the ending, I think there was a very like human nature to that.
Yeah.
Or arguably kind of like a prey and predator nature, right? Because even in nature, right, you know, you have the predator and prey, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every time a predator encounters a potential prey that they will go and kill it for food or whatever, right? Sometimes they just kind of let it be. And so it almost feels like at the end of the book, Frank could definitely have caused havoc throughout it. Could have even killed Kenji's girlfriend, as you know, Kenji was afraid of. Yeah. But at the end, he decides to let them go, right? So yeah, that's also a really, really interesting point. And so there's multiple layers in here, but it does play like a horror film, a psychological thriller, and a little bit of philosophy in there too, right? Yeah, so sure. Yeah, to me it was a really interesting conversation and combination of everything. Yeah. Okay, so as a booktube, we will be, I guess, rating these. I know some people don't like that, but you know, just take this with a grain of salt. It's just our take on this, and I'm sure as we continue reading different types of books, different levels of crazy, these ratings will change. But for me personally, I'm gonna rate this a 4 out of 5 severed ears. 4 out of 5 severed ears this time. What about you?
So I'm close. I'm almost there, but I think this time around, because I did have that big expectation in the beginning, and it didn't quite land for me. I think I'm gonna give it 3.5 miso soups.
Miso soups
out of 5. So.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, this was our first booktube video. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking around. And we hope you enjoy it. If you did, like this video. You can comment if you agree with what we said, if you've read it, if you plan to read this, that'd be cool. You can also subscribe. We'll be having some more of these conversations, first with books, different kinds. We'll probably throw in a novella in there. Yeah. Maybe some manga, maybe. Manga. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And then because we really like movies, we might even do a book-movie comparison. So there's a couple things we have in the works, so stick around. And until next time, remember to embrace the darkness and that we are all creeps.
Bye.